James at 16 will not be presented this evening. James at 16 will not. James at 16 will not be presented this evening, but will return next week at its regular time. Stay tuned now for a special 2-hour What Really Happened to the Class of 65.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
I was excited to get the opportunity to work on Captain America for the regular series, particularly because after a long period of trying these other looks for the character, they were finally returning him to his classic appearance, and I had let it be known that I wanted to work on classic looks of characters as much as possible. And luckily, he's one of those characters you can never completely escape his original design. And it just would happen to be that Ta-Nehisi Coates would be writing this new series, which makes it even more of something to be a spotlight put on it. And he can bring a lot of topicality and a lot of introspection of what Captain America's symbol can mean today and what it's challenged by in terms of the times we live in. And it's a perfect way to be involved with the project because I've always felt that Captain America's got a great history of being a character relevant to what was going on in our world, what was going on in American society. He's never been just this flag-waving character of, you know, like, hey, whatever America does, just go along with it because, hey, we're all about America. In a way, he was a character of contradictions. He's draped in the flag, but he's always sort of running head up against these compromises for American ideals and what we should be keeping at our heart.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm on my laptop, you'll forgive me. John Suntress here on Word Balloon. I am happy to welcome, as I pick on him with my finger here, Steve Orlando, everybody. Good to see you, Steve. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back on.
Absolutely, man. Well, you know, you're already enticing us with a brand new Spider-Man 2029, or 2099, pardon me, series following last year's series, right?
Yeah, they're keeping me in the near future here, but we are you are correct. We started off with issue 1 last week and we're running weekly throughout this entire month. So there's going to be, it's almost like there's a movie with Spider-Man 2099 coming out and they want to have some content for it. But I've been lucky anyway because that stuff was my future content when I was younger. So like it is wild to have done it the first time. It's even wilder to be back. And honestly, the first issue already went back to print, so it'd be wild to do even more. But we're trying to kick as much ass as we can in the pages we got. As you probably have guessed, it is basically Maximum Carnage 2099, and I could not be more excited about that.
That's great, man. And yeah, again, you know, following on last year's miniseries as well. And, you know, we're, you know, next issue 2, obviously out on Wednesday. So, you know, I can we reveal some of the other characters that have shown up? It's not just Carnage. Obviously, Spider-Woman is back.
Yeah, we can go into it. I mean, we're as always with 2099, starting with Exodus, but going forward as well. You know, it's been around for 30 years. And not just that, but there's been a variety of versions of 2099. So what we did with Exodus is we wove them all together into Earth 2099, a multiverse world where the new heroic age started in the year 2099 because we ran into a logistical issue. You know, there's so many stories at this point. How do they all take place in the same year? Well, now they don't have to. Now this is the age that began with the emergence of characters like Spider-Man 2099, like the X-Men of 2099. In that year, and then is moving forward as well. So we got the classics, but as you hinted at, we have new characters that were introduced in Exodus, Spider-Man 2099 Exodus. That goes for Spider-Woman. That goes for Moon Knight. But we also have characters that are debuting for the first time in 2099 in this series, like Blade 2099, who I'm super excited about.
That's this week's issue you got, Blade, and someone else, right?
Oh man, well there's a ton, right? So like this is the thing they like. I long for the day when we're writing a solo feature. When will that happen? But no, we have Blade, we have Halloween Jack coming back. We have a new Flip Side. Man, there's just a ton of stuff. I'm not going to spoil it all, of course, but we've got a lot in there. And you know, it's just been fun. The new Flip Side allowed us to also like give some love to the second Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man design, which I also thought was killer. Like the classic is unassailable, but Miguel's never had a bad costume. It's kind of you know, it kind of goes that way for Spider-Man. He's had at least 3 perfect costumes: the black costume, obviously the Ditko, and I would argue Miguel's original costume too, the Leonardi. So it's been fun also to just find a way through the workings of comics to get the other Miguel costume into, as admittedly a robot, you know, a DNA seeking robot with a thresher for a face, but he's still in there, you know.
Very cool. And yeah, so Carnage, obviously the big bad, but we're seeing some, you know, obviously Venom too, debuting at the end of last issue. But tell me about Miguel compared to Peter, because they are different guys.
Well, the thing is, they are different. I think Miguel, I mean, you know, they're both unequivocally Spider-Man, but as you go back and read the original, like Peter David stuff, especially, I mean, he's been writing the character almost since his inception, and pretty much throughout as well. There's been very few lulls, and I think Miguel, his humor is a little darker. It's not to say that he's meaner, but he's okay being scarier, you know. And I understand that. I mean, he doesn't have the quote old Parker luck, but his whole origin is being abused by you know, the corporate industrial system. You know, he's been let down a lot of times. I think that's why he's so driven to not allow those types of abuses to continue. I mean, he is quintessentially Spider-Man in a way that is completely unique and different from Peter, but they're both that person that is the everyman. You know, they're the neighborhood hero. Of course, in a cyberpunk future, the neighborhood goes from probably, you know, Nueva York probably goes from like Boston to Washington, D.C. It's a big neighborhood, but he's still, you know, I don't want to say the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because again, he's a little edgier and he's willing to have people be terrified of him. But the non-joking version of that, the person that when you take his mask off, you've seen him 1,000 times at the grocery store and things like that, that's still him, you know. And so I think that is both where he's different, because how he got there is a little more, it's not more painful. It's just, again, it's just a different path. He's kind of his own Uncle Ben in a way. And he does probably get a little angrier, and he's more willing to be frightening. But he's still Spider-Man. He's still the guy that's always going to be there, even when everybody else says, you know, fuck the little guy. He's incapable of doing that.
You know, you've been able to play and world build from a future standpoint in the DC universe. And obviously, again, this is your second bite of the apple for 2099. Is there room with Nueva York, or even extending beyond it, to world build in these stories?
Hell yeah. I mean, you know, we both in big and small ways, you know, we repositioned the mutants of 2099 in Exodus in a pretty big way, and I hope to be able to get back to that. And we made a major change. You know, the stuff going, the money system of 2099. So much of the original series was extremely prescient, and I was just talking about this with in reverse today. I was talking about The Sopranos and how a lot of it has been really prescient, but other things have been really awkward in the 30 or 20, actually, pardon me, 20 years since. Things like them saying, "Oh, well, you know, when they say Al Capone, we say Rudy Giuliani." Well, that didn't really work out for them, right? The point is, you can never tell. You know, it's impossible. You can only do your best to be prescient in the moment, and then history says, you know, how that played out. In the case of a lot of the original bones of 2099 as a universe, they nailed it. The original creators, things like the fact that there's a certain level of wealth in 2099, which is based on this card system. Like we have credit cards, the black cards, the aluminum cards. There's a certain level of wealth where you were just above the law, and I didn't come up with that, man. Like that was Pad. That was John Francis Moore. Those are the original 2099 creators. So there's a lot to chew on, but there's a lot to develop. We did away with that at the end of Exodus.
Yes.
And now with Genesis, we're seeing when you upend the system, we're seeing the chaos that results. And we're also seeing how easily something that is good and true and righteous can be maligned when you run into bad faith actors. And there's probably no fewer bad faith actors than Carnage himself.
Understood, man. It's a great start. I look forward to reading this week's issue. And it's good to have Miguel back. And as you say, obviously he's going to play a big part in the Spider-Verse movie coming up. Got just a couple weeks away, which is pretty crazy.
I know. I keep angling. I say that the only way for me to really write Miguel correctly is to just have like long, intense phone calls with Oscar Isaac. But no matter how many times I bring that up, it doesn't happen.
I understand. Did they invite you at least to the red carpet?
Oh God. Well, I mean, not yet, but I've been invited to similar things before, so there's no slight scene. But for Miguel's solo movie, we're doing what we can. We're hoping that when it happens in my mind. By the way, that's not like a surprise spoiler for the internet.
No, fingers crossed, absolutely. And it would be great. Yeah, I hope this does kind of open things up for that kind of potential. That would be wonderful.
I mean, the thing is, like, I say this a lot, John. Like, I feel like you always have your own little. Every generation has their version of the future. I think and really the answer for me is that it was Star Trek. But if we're talking about comics, it was 2099 for me. I mean, when that stuff hit, I was 7 years old, and there was nothing cooler than like the Mutroids and all that stuff. Like all that borderline edgelord stuff, and just like the hyper neon and the fun and the funky jargon. God jam this and shock that.
Punditroids. I liked how.
Punditroids, that's in Orlando, but
I liked it.
Claim it. But I think everyone has one, and this was for me. And for some people, it's for some folks, it's the Legion of Superheroes. Sure. For some folks, it's probably the original '60s Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is awesome, by the way. I mean,
sure.
I think the current, like, present day, quote unquote, version is awesome, but I think it's easy to forget that originally was like a Star Trek type utopian. We come from different worlds and we explore the universe and the future type things. I mean, they were on, if I recall, like the USS Captain America at one point.
I believe that's right. Yes, Vance Astro.
I'm still pitching all the time, but it was big for me, and a story that I've told before, but never on this podcast, is for my readers, I started trying to break into comics when I was far too young, as I've said ad nauseum, almost as often as I say I'm bisexual. Hey, buddy, I see you out there. And go fuck yourself. But anyway, but the thing about that is I was like 11 or 12 years old when I first started breaking in, and at the time I was mostly a DC reader, because it was what I happened to pick up first off the spinner rack. We didn't get a comic store in my side of the city until, well, about 1997. Before then, I was getting things like Web of Spider-Man off like the rack at Walden Books, but they were not current, So the first book that I bought in a regular like comic book store was this issue of Justice League, and I became a huge Grant Morrison fan and a Howard Porter fan for that matter too.
Yeah.
And then Grant left. They wrapped up Justice League and went to Marvel, and I, at the time, wasn't reading any Marvel stuff. So I was like, I'm going to follow them. And they came to New X-Men and kicked that off with Frank Quitely. Another fun story about me being an idiot is that at the time I was pissed that Quitely was not Howard Porter, because I barely understood at the time. And I was like, surely this is going to look like Grant's JLA as well. And I was like, what is this? And then, of course, what is this is one of the greatest living comic artists. But at the time I was like, where is Howard Porter, who was also an all-time great, by the way, but they're very different. So I decided I was going to pitch Marvel, man. Like I had already been pitching DC. I think I sent my first pitch into DC when I was 14. It was for Nightmaster with Tom Lyle, rest in peace. He was an amazing guy. And then at Marvel, I was like, well, I'm going to pitch the stuff I know. And I have this sample script with the new X-Men characters, but what could I possibly do as a real pitch? Like, they're not going to let me write X-Men because they got Joe Casey and Grant Morrison on there. So what could I maybe do that could be informed by this amazing run, but not be, in the same timeline? Boom. And it was X-Men 2099. So the first pitch I ever worked up for Marvel was at what would have been the 10-year anniversary of X-Men 2099. And of course, 20 years later, I ended up writing the 30th anniversary. So it's a good place to be.
That's awesome, man. That's beautiful. And I agree with you both on Quietly and Porter, up to all-time greats, no question about that.
It's just funny. I distinctly remember being like, "Who is this lumpy motherfucker?" And of course, like now I have a page. I have a cover of his in my office. I was a complete.
Oh, that's great.
Like many people, not new X-Men before people go crazy, but like when we're young, we're stupid. What can I say?
Oh, dude, please. I know 100%. Well, I remember I didn't feel this way, but I literally, because it was Sienkiewicz's birthday last week, I put up my first interview with them, and we talked about how, and I remember this very distinctly, reading things like Amazing Heroes, how mad everybody was when he took over the New Mutants, as opposed to what Saul Buscema was doing. And it's, I mean, when it is that kind of drastic art change, it is, and especially for a little kid. It's
That's
like,
pretty. That is a pretty drastic one. I'll give you that. That's like, but the story history is littered with stories of such foolishness. I mean, I was also pissed at the time that Eduardo Barreto finished the Martian Manhunter run for Tom Mandrake, right? And now, like, I can't believe that they got Eduardo Barreto to finish the. I mean, and I love Tom and Jan too, but I was, Al was very different, and I was just like, who is this man? Oh, it's only just this classic of the '60s through '80s, coming by to do his thing. What a fool I was. It's all right.
Yeah, great loss. Great loss, very young. It bums me out that he's not around making new stuff. God, it's been almost 10 years now that I think about it.
I'm going to be real with you, John. I did not know that he passed, and rather than sitting here and acting like that, I would rather admit that I was out of the loop on that, and it is unfortunate to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, happier things. You'll forgive me. I'm on Marvel Unlimited. Marvel just finally put me back on the press list. So I got this week's books, I got last week's books, and I haven't been able to figure out how to find old stuff. So I'm way behind on Scarlet Witch. Tell me about the series and everything. Was it more than 5? Is it ongoing? What's going on?
It's ongoing. Well, no. So I didn't know that Eduardo had passed, and because you're on a 6-month delay, you have missed Scarlet Witch. So that's okay. We're trading. But you could look forever. Well, you could look forever though, because we only launched in January, and I think it is 6 months, right? So
the first issue was on Marvel Unlimited, so I didn't know that.
There you go. Nice. I'll give it to you. Well, we are extended to at least 10 with an annual, which is coming out. So it's May. We just had issue 5. June, you're going to get your annual Scarlet Witch annual, which has a big Agatha Harkness and Wanda Maximoff stories. You might imagine Wanda Maximoff is in it. It's her book. But
sure,
pardon me, a big Agatha guest spot, and and a guest appearance by a demon named Russell, which was a fun coincidence based on the name of our cover artist, of course. And then we're back for issue 6 in July, which is and hopefully more. By the way, we're running 6 to 10 now, but if things continue, especially because sales have been going the upward trend, if they keep doing that. We got stories for days, obviously. Like my personal goal, I would like for Wanda to destroy Moon Knight and make it to issue 25, but that's a friendly rivalry. I actually just read all of Jed's Moon Knight, who's worked on with a variety of artists, and it's fucking great, by the way. So if you are looking for something else to catch up on Unlimited, strong recommend. But no, we are going to 10 and hopefully much longer because we certainly got plans.
That's beautiful, man. No, I'm very excited and everything. Have they de-aged Agatha, or is she still granny-ish? I mean, I know where she is in the TV show and everything.
They did, but I didn't.
Okay.
It did. The Agatha de-aging went down in the Midnight Suns miniseries.
Okay.
She is young, vaguely Catherine Hahn-esque as you might imagine, in the annual. But as she tells Wanda, she's always been young. It's just the exterior matches the interior now. Again, or rather, it does again in the annual. But no, she did get younger in Midnight Suns, along with a bunch of other stuff that happens in that book, of course, which is for folks to check out. But she comes to the book, and then she also does kickoff events that will then be picked up in Contest of Chaos, which has been written by being produced by some of my peers. But we're very excited to kick it off in the annual.
That's cool. Yeah, what can you tell us about is the annual part of the current arc, or is it's standalone and everything?
It's so you don't. I mean, all you really would need to know to read the annual is the very basics that, you know, Wanda has a magic door and she lives. I mean, you don't even need to know that she lives in the Hudson Valley, to be honest, just that she has a shop somewhere. But it will push forward the themes of the first arc. The thing which really go back not just to my book, but all the sacrifices Wanda made in Trial of Magneto and in Darkhold and things like that. But this is, I mean, so much has changed for Wanda and so much has changed for Agatha. I will say, for folks who are looking for big, bombastic magic battles, that is the annual. Wanda is no average witch, as folks know, and it takes a lot to really successfully distract her or swerve her. And that's really all I'll say as far as the lengths to which Agatha has to go to get what she wants in the annual. It's not as simple as like Nothing in the Hand, of course, for Scarlet Witch. Distracting her is a multi-dimensional battle that takes you all across the Marvel universe, just in hopes that she, you know, her guard gets let down for a couple seconds. And that's really, as to what she wants, you'll have to pick up the book, but it is a big blockbuster blowout between them. But it's still very in character for Agatha, who, you know, knows that Wanda is someone who can't really be told things. She has to be shown things. And Agatha thinks that she's took too much on. She thinks that she's made herself even more of a target, but that's just because like a lot of Wanda's other antagonists or even some of her peers, they don't really understand where she's at. They don't really understand that she's changed from the type of person she was for almost like 20 years of comics time. Who knows, or real time? Who knows how long in comics time? But she's not the person that is unsteady anymore or can't handle the burden on her shoulders. But just because she knows that doesn't mean everyone else in the Marvel universe does. And that ultimately is what brings Agatha to her door to kick off the annual.
Very cool. Here's some comments from people. Barhoom says, I can't wait. I've already pre-ordered the annual. And
We love that.
Says, I hope I support every issue. I hope we have plenty more. And then also Jace says, Scarlet Witch is one of the best books of the year. Love it. And he really likes Darcy, he says, is a pleasant surprise.
Darcy has been really fun. It's been a pleasant surprise for me too, to be quite honest. You know, I've been pretty open over the fact that this was sort of a moment of kismet in a lot of ways. We had created a new character to fill the role that Darcy ended up having in the book, and the reason it became Darcy is we, you know, again, as is not a secret, like you need everything you can to kick a book in the ass when you're launching one these days, including the debut of an MCU character. And that being said, we realized we were already writing Darcy, this new character that speaks basically, or was already talking like, well, my sarcastic voice, which is not that dissimilar from Kat Dennings. So we said, why don't we just go all the way with this? And so it was just as much of a pleasant surprise for me, but it's paid a lot of dividends. And I think it's a key to the book because it's easy to get lost. It's easy to get lost, especially in magic lore, when everything has a wild name and all these things. And there are, you know, even if we don't hinge the book on them, as some others do, there are rules and things like that to the lore. It's easy to sort of get really high up into, like, again, like a high fantasy type setup, which can make people feel like there's no way in. But when you have Darcy, you have this person that is always there to remind us that this stuff is wild. This stuff is crazy and strange and absurd in a good way. But what Wanda thinks is normal is by no means normal or mundane, because her life has been buck wild. And Darcy lets us comment on that in ways and lets us never get too haughty or stuck up in the lore, which I think is really, it's a pleasure. And by the way, that's why she works in the Thor movies and the MCU as well. For every moment of like, oh, it's a soul forge, you get her calling Mjolnir meow meow, right? And it's like just enough where you're able to relax and not get worried by all this stuff being thrown at you.
Yeah, they, and even though it's not a magic example, but this is why I love Foggy so much in Daredevil. They kind of cut through the shit and remind people of like what normals would see watching all this stuff happen. And obviously in the magic case, even more so, for Darcy. But yeah, it's like you need a good Greek chorus.
Well,
For the
and
hero.
you need a scoundrel. Not that Darcy's a full scoundrel, but like people obviously like lightsabers and stuff. But there's a reason Han Solo is incredibly popular, right? Because he's the one that's like, oh man, being a sexless monk is annoying. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fuck Princess Leia and I'm gonna party. I'm gonna break the rules, right? Like Han Solo is us in many ways. And so yeah, I mean, it's clear where that character fits, but it's easy to forget, especially for when you're on the creator side, because to be honest, like it all makes sense to us in our minds, even if it doesn't on the page, because we're in our fucking head. So like it is nice to I mean, sometimes it's nice to ground ourselves with these characters, and as I had hinted at, Darcy came about in a collaboration with the two editors of the book, and it worked out great. And I was able to set her up to be fallible, but also have a unique point of view. She has a strong sense of right and wrong, but she's also foolhardy. She's also stubborn. She's not a perfect character, and those I think are the best kinds.
Couple comments. The Wheeze really likes that Alex Ross Scarlet Witch Mephisto cover. And
it's very good, the Wheeze. You should keep an eye out for the Magneto one. I can't remember if that's out or not yet, but for folks who saw issue 5, actually, John, I will say something relatively, someone with a real magnetic personality came back at the end of issue 5 on the last page. So kind of a big week last week, if you were asking me to talk about things that happened. So I'm clearly a fan of that Magneto cover, I guess is all I would say.
Outstanding. Barhoom says Darcy and Wanda's relationship is so cute. I love Darcy so much.
She is. The thing is that she always has a sense of humor, and we early on realized as well that Wanda needed an injection of one too, but she's just kind of trying to figure it out, right? Like Wanda's humor is, we were talking about it, when we were on the calls figuring out the book, we were talking about how people frequently say that Liam Neeson has no sense of humor, like famously so, but in not having one, he can sometimes be accidentally funny. And the thing is that like Wanda's never been like, she's not a quippy type person. So we're sort of going on that journey of figuring out things like sarcasm and jokes with her throughout the book, because that's part of her turning the page. And you see things like, you never really know if she's quite joking, right? Like in issue 1, she tells people she dropped Dr. Hydro into a pocket dimension that's just the New Jersey DMV. And everybody says, oh, are you joking? And she just says, you'll never know. Like that's kind of where she fits. And then, you get Darcy to give a little more of the obvious levity. And we've gotten things through that I was not sure would make it out. I didn't think we could get away with her calling the Golden Age Vision Ass Kiss instead of Arcus. But we did. I didn't think we could get away with her calling Polaris She-Hulk, but we also did. And we also, I think in issue 5 is where Darcy's fussing over Wanda because she's wounded, which John, because you read the book. And no, I'm just busting your balls. But,
I know you are.
And she says, Darcy, please, I've fought Thanos, right? And Darcy just says, oh, I don't know her. A thing that I did not think we would be able to get through, but here we are, and I'm really happy for it. And of course, she'll continue to have fun. She's got some real opinions about Agatha, as you might imagine. I think she calls her a nosy soccer mom at some point. No, she calls her a nosy yoga lady. Pardon me. But of course, we'll continue going forward. Issue 6, I can't really talk a ton about, but I can talk about what's on the cover, which is Wiccan and Hulkling and Wanda. And for folks of the 2 issues of Silver Surfer that I read as a kid that impacted upon me, the return of Ganymede, basically the space version of an Amazon type, created by your friend and mine, Ron Mars.
Awesome.
Along with maybe your friend, but I haven't met in person, Ron Lim.
I have only briefly met Ron Lim at Terrificon. They had all the Infinity Gauntlet people together and stuff, so Ron was there. That's the only time I've met him. That's all, and of course Ron Mars, my God. I know how important he's been in your career, and also good friend of both of ours. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, Ron is a good dude. He was excited that anyone remembered Ganymede. But what can I say? It was a cool design, and there's something about Wanda orbiting these warrior sects, these warrior orders that fascinates me. Clearly, because we do the Bacchae as well in issue 4 and 5.
Okay.
I'll give you the quick version, John. You find out that the reason Darcy is there, what gets her through through the last story, is that she's a journalist, but she has already lost her job. She as I said, she has a strong sense of right and wrong, but doesn't have a lot of patience, and she's still stubborn. So she runs this article she knows is true, but she doesn't wait to back up or verify her sources. So she ends up getting nailed for libel. She gets fired, and she becomes more and more desperate for a comeback, to the point where she infiltrates this one group of the Bacchae, which are Marvel's version of the Amazons. But the group that she infiltrates are known for being too extreme. Okay. Their only punishment at all is death. Like, that's the only thing they deal out. And so she's infiltrated them, and she's trying to expose them, but in the process she gets caught. She kills one of them in self-defense and flees right through the last door. The only thing about that is, now that she's killed one of the Bacchae, the leader of the Bacchae is duty bound to avenge them, whether she even likes those people, those sisters, or not. Like, she's bound to do it, and that's what brings Wanda into conflict with Hippolyta, who is the person that Darcy's been hiding from for the first 5 issues. So it's kind of like our Scarlet Witch version of the Hikatea, which Rucka and J.G. Jones did. You know, Wanda is in the right, defending someone who did do the thing that, you know, the inclination would be she didn't do this, she didn't commit murder. She did. It wasn't self-defense.
Okay.
She was Hippolyta saying, well, I have to kill this person, and I'm avenging someone who I don't even agree with, right? But I'm bound by duty, and that's what brings her into conflict with Wanda. But Wanda's had enough experience bucking tradition that the ending of issue 5 isn't necessarily what you might expect. Not that they don't have a full all-time banger of a fight, you know. Like, I think Hippolyta, like a lot of people, assumes that Wanda can't throw a punch because she's a sorceress, and not just is she a sorceress / witch, excuse me, she's one of the most powerful ones. I mean, she could snap and turn the moon into a bowl of pudding, and that would be easy. But they forget that she's trained by, I mean, one of her best friends is Captain America, you know? So she can throw hands for a limited amount of time. You know, if you know, like John knows probably well, there's nothing, if I have a motif as a creator, it is people putting their fists up after a page turn.
Absolutely, buddy.
Well, what's more primal than that? You know, what's a more primal image of defiance than that? So, anyway, she throws down with Hippolyta, and that's how we get to Darcy where she is now. That's the very, you know, and to the wheeze, the sisterhood does return. I love Tyrant. I will say I got to bust Mars's chops a little bit. So, and I'm pretty sure I already told him this on the phone too. But if not, whatever. The point is that Ganymede, you called it the sisterhood, but when I went back and read the issue, it was actually called the Spinsterhood, and members of the group were called the Spinsters, which has like not amazing connotations. So we did have to do a little bit of a massage from the 90s to where you find out that they're called, I guess this is a mild spoiler, you find out that they're actually called the Arch Sisterhood, like the first or you know, like reigning sisterhood, but that their enemies call them the Spinsterhood. You know, that's a name that people who rarely survive use. But we love you, Rons, and we love that this came out in the 90s when we didn't consider that it was called the Spinsterhood.
He is agreeing with you. Yes, he didn't realize that the name did change.
But but you know, that's a good lesson for folks who read my stuff, and many of my peers. Like I try and other folks in the office. I hate retconning my peers' work because it feels like it feels disrespectful. So, you know, yeah, that thing happened, and whether I was friends with Ron or not, which I am, like, we didn't say that they weren't called that. We just built something else on, you know, and we added to it, you know, rather than just saying, well, this was never this way.
No, I like it, man. Jay says thanks for the in-depth Darcy secret origins. Oranges. That's what Art Balthazar coined that instead of origins. He says oranges, secret oranges.
Oh, Art Balthazar, what a gem. He says a lot of things.
He does indeed. So
someday I'm going to see him not at like an energy level of 13 out of 10, but it hasn't happened in the past 15 years.
Yeah, add another 5, and that's been my experience as well. Absolutely, man.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah.
There you go. Very good, man. Wow. He'll be thrilled if he's watching. So also Marauders still happening. And forgive me. I'm on Marvel Unlimited time.
I love how prepared you are.
I'm sorry, Steve. I worked really hard to get back on the press list. I swear to God. I was unrelenting. I'm like, no. I go, you guys need to do this. Really, I got CV on the case and everything. He's like, oh man, absolutely, I got.
Marauders did wrap with 12. However, we are things that happen in Marauders, things that happen in Giant Size X-Men Thunderbird, things that happen in X-Men Green, which is beginning its final arc right now. Are all going to come together in the Mutant First Strike one-shot that comes out, I think, in June. You folks got to forgive me because these things go to press really, really early these days. But I think we're out in June because we're currently in May and it's not out. And so all those threads will come together into a big moment, a big one-shot that is about disaster relief, which is kind of what more is Marauders, but a rescue book. And that's going to come out in June. It'll be one of the 4 one-shots. The first Sons of X, I believe, is already out or out this week. That's the one by Cy and Phil Noto.
Okay.
And we will be out, and those one-shots are all sort of guiding us into the next era of X-Men, which is Fall of X. So Marauders has wrapped for the moment, but that, I mean, and basically everything else that I put my fingers on or around in the X-Men office is coming together in First Strike, and I think you'll see something similar in the one-shots by the other creators as well, which off the top of my head, Cy is it's me, Cy, Alan, Kieran. There we go.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, like I said, hey man, I swear, in a couple months I'll be all caught up. Don't worry.
I'll be back in a couple. Yeah, no, in a couple months I'll just be behind on Iceman. It's okay.
There you go. When has Iceman debuted, or is it?
That's for Fall of X. So I really wasn't kidding because it won't be on yet. We debut I think in July or August.
Okay.
So I am doing Iceman with Vincenzo Caruto and covers by Jesus Saiz, which is super awesome. Sure. Jesus is like a bucket list creator for me, so here I am crossing another thing off the list, which is really.
Is this your first time with Bobby? Right.
Bobby's never had me, John. How dare you? I don't know if you remember. I don't know if you remember, but I am bisexual. I got you again, buddy.
Oh yeah, I heard about
that. But I'm gonna now you got me thinking. He's in First Strike, but I feel like I did write him for a little bit in in a book before, but now I'm not sure. First Strike might have been the first time that we really worked together, that I've been able to write Bobby.
You worked together, absolutely, man.
Since we spent some intimate time together. But oh man, in my mind, I feel like I did do something else, but I could even be thinking about like the bad X Factor prose stories I wrote when I was like 7. So he's in First Strike, but regardless of if there's something I'm forgetting, because like he appeared in X-Men Green and things like that. Yeah. But like this is the first like extended focus that I've been able to work on with him. And it's hard to talk about the book because so much changes after the Fall of X one-shots and the Hellfire Gala.
Okay.
But I will say, I mean, it's in the solicits. Bobby has a new stronghold in Antarctica, the most inaccessible and coldest place in the world. And he'll be leaping out for an all-new era of feats that involve him just being a superhero like he is. You know, folks, I mean, he spends a lot of time with mutants, of course, these days, but folks forget, especially folks younger than even myself, like he was, I mean, in the Defenders, he was in the Champions, of course, he was on the cartoon show with Spider-Man.
Right.
He has a lot of ties outside of the mutant world too, and those are going to play in a big way in the book, along, of course, with his mutant identity as much as it can. But there are factors going around that are the big nebulous thing I can't talk about. That means he's going to be big mainstream superhero stuff in the Iceman book. And it is really hard to talk around the big thing, but if I don't, like, Jerry just comes to my house and kills me. So I can't do that.
No, that's great, man, and you're right. I mean, that is the thing. Iceman has, and these other ties to the Marvel universe, and yeah, I think that's great that he's getting a bigger platform. Why not? That and also as an original five of the X-Men and everything too, or is it six?
I mean, everyone
Yeah,
tabulates in their own way. I feel like it's the original five. I don't know why.
Cyclops, Beast, Angel, Iceman, Marvel Girl. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just don't know why people don't count Professor X. But
Well, you're right. Yeah, but that's like the Chief of the Doom Patrol, buddy, in my opinion.
I mean, it is very much like the Chief and the Doom Patrol, but the Chief is
yes,
awesome.
literally.
I will just say that Mimic has the powers of the original X-Men, and that includes Professor X.
That's true.
Anyway,
come to me, my X-Men, absolutely. Barham wants to know if we're going to see Wanda and Iceman together at one point. I love Iceman, one of my favorite mutants.
Obviously, I love Iceman too. Barham, I think folks who see me on social media know I rather than like tease around the dick, I just like to be honest with people. It'll completely depend on how long the Wanda book runs. I also love Iceman. Clearly, I'm working on the book, but we don't know what's happening after 10 yet because we got to make sure people buy the book and keep the story going. So much like and this is the answer, by the way, for any who is going to show up in the book question, because there's almost no bad guest stars because nearly everybody you can provoke something interesting with, but it's just about having time and the time and the space, because we know what we're doing up to issue 10, as you might imagine. But I would love to get them together. But I got to get Speed in there. Like there are family members that I got to get in. But it would be nice. I mean, I have dreams for Wanda. The Kooky Quartet reunion would also be on that list, by the way.
Yes, please.
Pull that off, but it's all about having the time.
I understand.
Although we do have oh man, I almost let something out of my mouth. We don't have a Kooky Quartet reunion. Oh wait, no, that's not. Look at me, I'm getting my books confused. Someone from the Kooky Quartet, in a way, shows up in Iceman, and that's, I guess, all I can really say until solicits keep coming.
Exciting, very cool, man. No, and even as you pointed out, Iceman's history with the champions and things like that. Are you laughing at David Hazan?
David Hazan is a troll.
Is he?
Right now he is.
He's asking Brotherhood of Jewish Mutants? Absolutely, why not? And Barham is excited, so that's cool. Pumpkin Time, I will refer to you to rewinding at the beginning of the episode to hear about Peter David's Spider-Man 2099 and its influence on Steve's run, because I think Steve covered that.
But I'll also give the short answer now, Mr. P. Time. Of course, like not to be like demure or concise with the answer, but I don't think anyone will ever write more Miguel than Peter David. I mean, it's possible that I've written now more than most other people, and possible. That's not like a secret humble brag. I haven't tabulated it, but no one will ever come close to Peter David. He's been the main writer for almost 30 years. Yeah. For 30 years, even though there wasn't a book every one of those years. So, yes, I mean, that'd be like writing the Hulk without reading the Lee and Kirby stuff, or even more recently, like writing the Hulk without reading Al's run,
Al Ewing stuff, yeah.
Or writing the Titans without reading the Marv and George era. There are certain things you got to hit, and when you're doing 2099 Spider-Man, that's on the list. It's top of the list, is the Peter David stuff, especially the early stuff. And that's not to say that there's any negative about the later stuff. But I just find when you are trying to get to the core of a character, you don't want to get mired in a lot of the deep lore and continuity. You just want to find out exactly who they are. So especially like the first year of 2099, and I've been following it as a reader throughout anyway.
That's cool. And you said it before. And
also, P Time, I apologize regarding your pronouns. No way I could have known, but regardless, not my intent. So I apologize about that.
Oh, as far as pronouns go, okay, there you go, man. Absolutely. Cover your ass. Cover your bisexual ass.
Well, sometimes I don't, because I'm bisexual,
We're all laughing at a comment that I blocked. You'll forgive us all with the constant references to Steve's sexuality, which good for Steve. God bless him.
You should see my business. You should see my business card. You turn over, it says just a hole. You know,
Nice, charming. I learned so much from you, man, in the best way.
Well, you're an ally, John. But like,
I'm in
when
Chicago.
I see, well, yeah, which means you almost understand my stubbornness being from New York.
It's cool.
Chicago, though, like you guys will like. It's funny. I like this folk singer named Ann Heaton when I was in college, and she has a whole song about how Chicagoans are much nicer than New Yorkers. But I don't really know if it's true or not. She claims that the people in Chicago, like the joke is that people in Chicago purposely don't wear watches so they can just ask other people what time it is in the subway. Whereas in New York, like, I mean, you ask someone what time it is in the subway and they mean time to die, you know, but that may not be true. I didn't feel, I will admit that a couple of years ago, I went to stay with Tim Seeley for the weekend and I every day I would get up and walk across the light or the elevated train tracks where he lived at the time to the sandwich shop across the street. And I go there one day, and this place had a 24-hour coffee braised short rib breakfast burrito, right? So it was like eggs, cheese, and this cola short rib that they've been cooking for a whole day. It was fucking amazing.
I bet.
So I get it every day, and I go the first time. And after I put my order in, I'm sitting there fucking around on my phone. And rather than just like screaming my name, like happens at the bagel place I love in Astoria Bagel, by the way, if any of your listeners are from Astoria or Queens, that's my bagel shop when I visit. This guy came from around the counter and like handed me the food in a to-go bag and smiled at me. And I didn't know what to do, John. I didn't know if we were married after that or like what the fuck was happening. It's like I go with you now. It was like Kimmy Schmidt. Like I wasn't sure. Do I have to follow it home? I don't know.
You're killing me, man. No, we're good people. We're happy people in Chicago. We're nice people. Absolutely. Good
regarding Lord. Batman Shadow,
yes,
I mean, listen,
that's Mason's question. You'll forgive me.
I can't, I can't tattle out on Scott, but I mean, like, the Shadow's my favorite character in pop culture. So, I mean, the long and short of it is, obviously, there's few people that know Batman like Scott does. And especially DC at the time, I would argue that there were no larger Shadow fans than me. Possible exception to me and Dan. And so it was just two guys who really loved these two characters coming together and smashing them together in a way that's challenging for them both. And listen, especially the version with Riley, I love both books I did, but the version with Riley, the Batman Shadow one that originated at DC is still one of my favorite things that I've ever written. And if we didn't do that, we would never have gotten to do the Martian Manhunter series after. So I'm extremely, extremely proud of that. And I love the Shadow. You know, I want to give some sort of thing. I will say that Margot Lane, I'm trying to think about so Margot Lane, I just based her on my grandmother, who is also from Great Neck. Now we said Margot, I think it was from whichever one in Great Gatsby is Great Neck. I can't remember if it's East Egg or West Egg because one is Great Neck. For folks who don't know, East Egg and West Egg in the Great Gatsby are literally based on Little Neck and Great Neck on Long Island. And that's where my grandmother was from. And she was not 107 years old, but she did basically subsist completely on martinis and scotch. So I based Margot on her. And I'm really proud of the Margot Lane character as we presented her. You know, we were not shy about the fact that the Shadow is he's not a good dude. Like, I don't know what else to say. You sit down with Scott and the first thing we decided is that Batman is interested in justice. I mean, he's obsessed with justice, but the Shadow's obsessed with punishment. He doesn't
vengeance and punishment. Yes.
He doesn't really even care about the people he's saving. He cares about punishing the people that he just sees himself in, to be quite honest. And so, you had this scene that I'm really proud of, and Riley knocked it out of the park, where Margot has been tied up by the Joker, and the Joker thinks that the Shadow's going to come save her, and she's like, "You're an idiot! He's not coming to save me, And more so, I'm not really afraid of you because I've spent decades dealing with someone who's way scarier." And you have this moment where the Joker's sound effects laughter is green and it slowly transforms into red. And then he realizes that it's not his
Margot laughing
anymore. It's the Shadow's laughter. And
Oh, it's the Shadow's laughter.
I love that moment just because not only is he showing like his version of terror over the Joker's, but he is still like Margot is saying he doesn't care about her. And so his first comment out of his mouth is still him being a dick, because his line as he shows up to save her is just wrong again, Margot. You know, like even when he's not being a dick, he's being a dick. Which is kind of
Sure. That's awesome. Did you read the Patterson novel?
It's on the bookshelf, but I have not read it yet.
I haven't read it either. It got so many, honestly, unfortunately, bad reviews that I kind of am like, I'll wait till if it ever comes out in actual paperback.
I know he makes it's very modern. I almost think
Yes.
someone is inheriting the mantle of the Shadow, but I don't know this for sure. Like I'm quite literally just doing my recollection of what I read on the back of the book. Let me. Oh, okay. I know that you're pulling questions up, John, but obviously I can see them. Am I exclusive to Marvel? Absolutely not. As you'll see when I return to Donna Troy in a couple months for Tales of the Teen Titans, and I'm working with I'm going to cheat sheet because I don't remember her last
name. It's all right, buddy.
Because we haven't started yet. I'm working with Beth Lobo on that, and then Nicola Scott on the cover. So I'm not.
Oh, that's great.
But I have been having a killer time at Marvel. I mean, not that I didn't enjoy DC. I was just there for 5 years, and the change has been nice. And being able to work at a lot of different places has been really, really nice. But no, I'm excited to come back. Some of my favorite work at DC was with Wonder Woman, and there were a lot of things I didn't get to explore with Donna Troy on my run that we can now. So I'm excited to be back there, and a lot of other places, of course, as well.
Is that with Tales of the Teen Titans? I imagine it's got a couple features in it. So is it a 10-page feature? Is it a 20-page feature for Donna?
Oh, we have all 30 pages, but it is a mini.
Oh.
So your inclination is right. Where it's just parsed out in a different way. So there are 3 others. And again, I'm not using my cheat sheet here. So off the top of my head, there's a Beast Boy one, there's a Starfire one, there is a Donna one, and there is a 4th that I'll be quite honest, I can't remember what the 4th one is at the moment. Okay. And there's a Nicola cover to all of them.
Do they join up?
Well, I don't know if they joined, but she did all 4 covers with a similar layout and theme. And different creators that are all here to support what's going to be upcoming in her book, the main Titans book with Tom Taylor.
Awesome, man. Oh, that's fantastic. Honestly, right there, the Australian connection. I love both of those people. They're fantastic. And Nicola I've known forever. Yeah. So
she basically is Wonder Woman. So
well, she almost was in as you likely know. You know that story, don't you? She tried out for Wonder Woman, like an aborted attempt at a Wonder Woman show 20 years ago, around 20 years ago or whatever.
I do recall that now that you say it, but I would not have been able to present it otherwise. But I do recall that. And now I'm thinking about the screen caps from the Adrian Palicki pilot as well.
I met her last summer. My God. She is so cool, Adrian. Man, I loved her on the Orville. And it's a shame that she didn't get to be Wonder Woman because she would have been a great Wonder Woman. So
well, I just saw that Paramount might be doing their Lady J miniseries as a movie now, so she might get her chance not to be Wonder Woman, but to be a headlining action star sooner than we know.
I'm for it.
David, you're asking about.
I'm reading the 80s Iceman mini. I felt that Bobby is an extrovert that's really scared. This is good. I'm glad David's bringing this up because I wanted to ask you, without spoiling, to get inside Bobby's head. He says he feels he's an extrovert that's really scared of spending time alone with his thoughts. Do you disagree entirely? A fortress of solitude sounds like a prison.
Well, I actually agree completely with everything you said, which is where a lot of the drama from the book comes from. As I said, it's hard to talk about Iceman.
Sure.
Without until after the Hellfire Gala, but you're right. It's going to be a big struggle for him. Although I will say that the word fortress, I will say that the of solitude part has never come out of my mouth regarding Bobby's stronghold. It sure has been on Screen Rant and a couple other places that decided that would be a good headline. But he does have a fortress. And I think that your read on that being a problem for him is dead on. But that's where the drama comes from. That's how we make the donuts.
That's awesome. And then David asks, can you explain what the process is that led introducing Threshold? Is that his fortress, or
No,
if it
Threshold
was
is a
always
Marauders.
supposed?
No, that's a Marauders concept.
Go on, please.
David, I want to give you a good answer, but I have to admit, as phrased, it's challenging to answer your question. Just because I don't know what you mean when you say it was always going to lead to Genosha. But regarding Threshold, I can talk about the creation in general. I mean, this is something that came about with in conversations with Jonathan Hickman from the very start of Marauders. We knew that he had noted in his issue of X-Men that Apocalypse was the second generation of mutants. But we also knew that we were trying to, in the Krakoan era in general, sort of rethink what the mutant version of a given concept would be. Were this to be, were I to ramble on about being bisexual, it would be like queer theory, right? How do you queer a concept? And that's not one-to-one to making something mutant, by the way, before people start setting the internet on fire. But the point is just to what is similar is when you meet a new concept that is generally taken as a given, is to try to remove the assumptions about it and remove the social mores from it. And and with mutants, that meant removing some of the things that are natural limitations for humans. So in talking with Jonathan, we realized that just because something was the second generation of mutants, that doesn't mean that they necessarily had to come before the first. Or rather after the first, pardon me, because history doesn't have to be linear for people with mutant powers. So this combined with a real article that we had just come across about how there is a real extinction event in our fossil history going back about 2 billion years. And it's far enough away back that it's entirely plausible to science that there could have been a fully industrialized society on Earth. But if it was that long ago, especially with a mass extinction event that we see in the fossil record, it wouldn't be like ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. There would quite literally be nothing left. We would have no way of knowing because of the duration of time. It's almost beyond human understanding. And so we saw an opportunity there because if it really is a mystery what happens before that, and we can make educated guesses, of course, in the real world, but this is comics. So many things are taken as given that are not possible in the real world. So we decided that we were going to play with mutant history in a way that wasn't linear and in a way that also lead into real science. I mean, it's been said on and off that the Krakoan books are more science fiction books than superhero books. So it felt right to lean into that and do something that was big, that was sci-fi and was surprising, but at the same time was based in a plausibility that you don't always get with these types of books. Regarding the Genosian aspect, a similar impetus. It's not that it led to Genosha. That's all that confused me, David. So I apologize. But when we were thinking about how we were going to get the genetic material to create Threshold, we all came across Genosha because time and history is one thing that mutants don't have to take and accept in the same way that humans do. But with Genosha, especially with the fact that Cassandra Nova was in the book and she is the author of all of not all, but the vast majority of the pain that went on there. The Gengineer also has done some of that, of course. But the question became, well, Genosha is basically a giant gravesite. And why have mutants been settling for a graveyard? And even so, why have they just been thinking about resurrection when they're not limited to concepts like death and life? Could there be more? And this is what went into the genetic material from everyone in Genosha, the humans and the mutants, as well as all the living mutants in attendance, being hyper condensed into this Aleph, this basically Pandora's box, which then gets sent back in time and is opened by Pride to seed the primordial soup of genetic material that eventually becomes Threshold. So it was all about, basically, in both cases, Threshold and the Genosian Monument, it's all about just questioning, is this human thinking? Is this mutant thinking? How can we address a concept in a mutant way. And of course, the limitations, which is obvious, though I'll say it, is that I'm a fucking human being, right? So much like when we were doing Martian Manhunter with Riley Rossmo, Riley and I were trying to think, well, we need to not think like a human for this. We're inventing Martian culture and we need to act so we can shapeshift, we can become intangible, we have telepathy. And that's always the challenge. Is it successful in either of these cases? That's up to the readers, because we do have a major hurdle, and that is that we still have human brains and human bodies and things like that.
That's awesome, man. I want to, and David's got some really good questions. I actually do want to kind of hit them all. He wants to know, he loved the cast of Marauders. Since Wonder Woman has become really impressed with how you conceptualize action scenes, are there any secrets to how you write a plot around action sequences? Good process question.
To be honest with you, David, it's perhaps counterintuitive, but I try not to micromanage the artists I work with, because to me, and everybody is going to have a different answer. I don't think anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. It's just different. Where I look at making a comic as a true collaboration, and that means that all of my peers are equal to me. Like I am not in charge of the art of my artistic collaborator. I'm not in charge of the colorist or the letterer either, by the way. My job is to do what I do best, at least in my own mind. If I do it well, otherwise is up to everyone else. But my job is to do what I do best, which is write the script, be the first person to hold the baton, and set everyone else up for success, and also give them the room to do what they do best. So that means not necessarily going hyper specific and calling out beats in action, though I will broadly call out specific things if they're pertinent to the story. And I still do like full panel and page descriptions, but I leave the framing. I leave sometimes the specific style of attack and things up to the artist, because that they're here, they know how to tell a story on the page, and I've read their work. I mean, I don't do a book, especially an ongoing book, where I haven't read the previous work of the artist to get to know what they like to do. And even if I haven't had time to do that because it's a one shot or something, we've already had a conversation about what they like to do and what they're excited about. So if I have a secret or anything, it's that I realize that my artist the artist that I'm working with, not only are they an equal and respected peer who knows what the fuck they're doing, and I need to get out of the way for them, but they're our first audience. So they need to be excited, like if making comics is not making sprockets. You can micromanage everything and talk about, like, here's a table and here's what's in every single grain of the table. But when your creators, your co-creators, and that goes for editorial too, feel respected, feel like they're a key part and not just a cog in a machine, you get the best book possible. So it's actually all in the prep work for me, knowing what the artists I work with like to do, and what they're excited to draw, and knowing when I should be leaning in and when I should be stepping back, and giving them room to work.
David wanted to know also if there were any Wonder Woman stories that you have hidden in a folder in case you get to write her again. And if so, would any of them be a little longer than usual for you?
Well, first of all, yes, because there's a ton that I didn't get to do on Wonder Woman. As to longer, I wish, my friend. Like we're right now, not. It's impossible. I'm only stuttering because, like, people don't always need to know how the sausage is made, but the long and short of it is that the days of like 36 and 50 issue runs are kind of over.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like I would love to have them be longer than usual, but even if they were, I wouldn't know that until it happened, until I was in the process of it happening. So you can never start a book or a run saying, okay, well, there's going to be this killer beat in arc 3. That's issue 1, man, or my friends. And
you are right.
And then, like I said this on another place, I don't even remember where, but like arc 1 of a book, 100%. And then if you get arc 2, it's 110%. And then if you get arc 3, it's 115% or 120%. But you can't start at 90, especially not anymore. Like the days of a slow burn run, at least until there's a seismic shift in how we judge a book's success, they're not coming back. So I would love to have longer, but even so, if I did, I would still be planning to be going at 110% at the beginning, and then by the end, I guess somehow we'd be at 200%, and I just would be exhausted. But that's okay. that's what folks deserve.
I'm with you, and then so with you too, that there is no time. You have to put it all in the first issue to get people's attention and carry the momentum. No, absolutely, man. So it's funny because I know writers that haven't reached the top level yet will be like, well, I got this 10-issue story and it really kicks in issue 4, and it's like, good luck, man. It's like, and don't get me wrong, there could be plot twists and that kind of thing in a subsequent book, but yeah, it's that first punch that's really the important thing. David wanted to know what you thought of the Wonder Woman characters, Cheetah as a villain, Priscilla, Deborah, and Barbara.
I think it's slander that you're not including Sebastian. How about that? The not joking answer is that I've only gotten to write Barbara because she was clearly the main, wasn't clearly the main focus for a long time.
Barbara Gordon, I'm assuming, or a different Barbara?
Oh no, these are all Cheetah, John. These are all different people that have been Cheetah.
Oh, excuse me. I'm showing my
Priscilla Rich is the Golden Age Cheetah. Deborah, yes. and I forget her last name, David. I apologize. I don't know that she was the Silver Age, but she was an intermediate, maybe even Bronze Age character. And then, of course, Barbara Ann Minerva is the one that most folks know. But there's also Sebastian Ballesteros, who is the male Cheetah. I believe he was introduced in Phil Jimenez's run. I know Phil drew him, but I don't know if he introduced him. Anyway, the long and short of it is, first of all, I don't think there's such a thing as a bad character, so I think they're all interesting. But I did specifically have a lot of interest in Priscilla. She just wasn't on the table for me at the time. I would have to redo a lot more reading. Not rather than make people think I know everything and every character, I would have to do a lot more research and reading to find out why Deborah, whose gimmick I remember being pretty similar to Priscilla, is interesting versus Priscilla. But I could find it. I would just have to do the work.
Am I wrong, Steve? Didn't you do a Midnighter series at one point?
I did. I wrote 12 issues of Midnighter, and then I did a Midnighter and Apollo follow-up, and actually a couple shorts as well, which all just got collected, available right now. But in the Midnighter by Steve Orlando collection.
Arrowboro Snake wants to know if you'd be interested in writing a current Midnighter and Apollo series in the current TCU.
Well, my slithering friend, it's complicated. I mean, like, as with many creators, like, I enjoy making rent, so I would be interested. But I do have to say, like, I've written those characters for a long time, and so there's a part of me that does say, like, it's time for me to get out of the way and let new voices come on and write them, which I have been doing, by the way. Like, I loved what Philip Kennedy Johnson did with them in Action Comics. I loved what Michael Conrad and Becky and Michael Avon Oming had done before with him. And so my inclination is that I don't want to repeat myself and I don't want it to end up being my Freebird. But at the same time, if the situations were different enough, and the situations are different, like, continuity isn't necessarily exactly the same as it was, or if it was like a Black Label situation where I can do things that we couldn't do before, especially for a character like Midnighter who loves a good bit of ultraviolence. Yeah, I would like to. It's just, those characters specifically, I love them. I owe my career to Midnighter in a lot of ways. At the same time, like, that's a character that I always want to see what new people do things with as well. If I found something new to say, which I have, like they had me back for the Pride issue a couple years ago. They had me back for Cybernetic Summer Special, and I found some new angles. So I'm sure I could. And it's always fun. It's like going home and hanging out with your friends from back in the day. But it's a little more complicated than other characters would be.
I got to ask before we wrap up about Boris Karloff and Gold Key, right? Aren't you part of that?
I am part of it. I mean, and it's funny. Not only am I part of it, but I'm reuniting with Artyom Tarkanov, who's not the first artist I worked with, but the first artist I worked with on a miniseries. I actually, our book Undertow came out from Image a year before Midnighter did. And I got to work with him one other time, which was actually an American Vampire anthology. Speaking of Scott Snyder, call back. Thank you, Scott. And I love Artyom. He doesn't really draw like any other person on the planet, and he's only developed his style more since Undertow. It's almost like there's a strong it's like Picasso-esque, but also Russian iconography, or I should say Orthodox iconography. It's a very, very cool style. So to be able to work with him again on Boris was super, super exciting for me. And it's a story. It's a horror story. It's a culinary horror story. It's funny for the first going on 10 years that I was in the industry, I didn't really write a ton about where my job and where I worked before comics, which was as a wine salesman and a spirit specialist. But now I have Wanda working in the Hudson Valley, which is, her town, Lockhill, is a pastiche, not necessarily where I worked, but of every Hudson Valley town that I used to deliver wine to. And now we have this story that's about some of my clients, an ode and a light ribbing to some of my clients who used to work in the restaurant business as well. So it's, as I said, it's culinary horror. It's Boris Karloff meets the Bear. Speaking of Chicago, and I'm super, super excited about it. And I owe that gig to Michael Conrad, who introduced me to those guys. So we love him for that.
That's great, man. No, I love the novelty of bringing back Boris Karloff, and I'm a fan of Thriller, the show that inspired the comic series and everything. And yeah, I mean, that was, Gold Key really knew what they were doing with Boris Karloff and the Twilight Zone back in the day. So it's good to see.
And for a nerd too, obviously we enjoy getting paid for our work, but I think many a creator would just would do a gig for Gold Key and be equally, not more excited, but equally excited just to have that logo on one of their books.
Absolutely, man.
We like getting paid, of course. I'm not going to do the Mark Waid, God love you, Mark. I would write I'd write Fantastic Four for $1. Which, for folks who don't know, he said that in Wizard magazine when I was a young man, and then Joe Quesada sent him $1, and that's how we got the Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo run of Fantastic Four, which I'm sure they paid him after. And it's a killer run, by the way, if folks have not checked it out.
So good. Absolutely, man. That's so funny. No disrespect to Roberto Aguirre Scarza, but I was talking about how Bill Jemas wanted, hey, let's make the Fantastic Four poor. And Mark's like, no, that doesn't make sense. He's the smartest man in the world. If he lost all of his money, he'd just come up with a new invention and sell it to the military, and hey, we're in the money again. Don't worry about it. So
didn't Roberto end up sending them to the Pine Barrens? Yeah, he did. He did Marvel Knights for her instead.
You got it. Yeah, Roberto got the gig.
Pine Barrens with Steve McNiven, I think.
I believe that's correct. Yes, there you go, man. Very good. 20 years ago. Jesus Christ. 20 years ago. Steve, Wednesday is my 18th anniversary doing this podcast.
Congratulations. Honestly, I just told my boyfriend you had the longest running podcast in the industry. And I hope that wasn't a lie.
I don't know if I don't know how often Chris Marshall, actually even Comic Geek Speak was like two months older than me. They're still around. And Collected Comics Library, I know, started earlier in 2005 than I did. But there's only a handful of us that started in 2005. So
that's awesome. So on Wednesday, your podcast can finally drive after 9 or whatever.
Exactly, man. Or I was going to say sample some of the wine and liquor they used to sell, but no, not yet. I guess depending on the state.
Yeah, no, not in Massachusetts. Are you kidding me?
Not in Illinois either, for that matter. So no, I hear you, man. Too much. Am I missing anything, Steve? Is there another?
So we've got Exorcist Never Die, which is coming out currently from Mad Cave. The short and the long and short of that, John. First of all, Mad Cave has been an amazing place to work, so I'm really happy to have landed there for a couple.
Great comic, great label. Yes.
And we are doing our Combat Exorcist fight book, which I'm super, super excited about. Honestly, it's like if you like the action in a book like Midnighter, for folks who read me there, this is a high action Christian mythology book, but not Christianity book. This is important to say. We're exploring the lore in the same way that a Dante's Inferno video game does, or in the way that I said this on another podcast. We are respecting the lore, of course, because it's important to a lot of people. But we're also understanding that perspective makes a lot of difference on these things. Like Jack Kirby turned Thor into a superhero 1,000 years ago. That would have pissed a lot of Vikings off, because he was like, and so we are of course understanding that this is an important area of mythology for a lot of folks, but we are treating it as that. We are treating it as mythology and a place to build stories. So it's not, ironically, no one is going to hell in Exorcist Never Die, except of course the demons who get their asses kicked and get sent back there. But it's gorgeous. Sebastian Parise is on the art, and it's essentially the Raid meets the Exorcist. We have 2 combat exorcists fighting their way to the bottom of a hellscraper, which is an underground skyscraper going straight down in Los Angeles. And at every level, they have to channel the powers of different angels to overcome demons signifying the 7 deadly sins as they fight their way down.
Wow, that's great, man. And yeah, like you said, Matt Cave is a great imprint. They just keep coming up with great books. So I'm glad you have a relationship with them. That's wonderful.
Oh, there's more coming.
Excellent to hear. That's fantastic, man. Well, again, we got all this great stuff coming as far as the X-Men event, and looking forward to Tales of the Teen Titans with Donna Troy, and continued success on the current event happening in Spider-Man 2099, and of course Wanda. So yeah, you're killing it, man. You got a full docket. And
no, well, we're trying. And thank you as well for folks reading 2099. I will say, like, I hope we get to do more. I really was shocked how much I've enjoyed, specifically the characters that I really loved. A lot of the new folks. It's been fun evolving Moon Knight 2099 into where she is now. And it is honestly, John, if you read Exodus, it is a love letter to, I don't want to say golden age type stuff, but at least silver age type stuff. Like there's a little bit of pun. She lives on the moon with a security system that monitors the Earth called the Moonicle, and just little things really please me. And then Blade 2099, it comes out in 2 days, and it's already into that. So I will say, like, his deal is super, super exciting to me, and so simple and clean in a way that I really hope to go back. He was raised by the original Blade, and his origin is almost the same, except that where Blade was born, his origin is the same as the broadly speaking origin that people think of for Blade. As I recall, his original one was not the one from the movie, where he's born as his mother's turning into a vampire, but that is what's going on with Blade 2099. He is instead of being half vampire, he is half zombie. And instead of struggling with the thirst, he struggles with the hunger. So if he doesn't feed in, a regular amount of time, he becomes more and more zombie-esque and more out of control. And it's one of those things where it's a little bit in the future. So, Blade has his serum. Blade 2099 has a 3D printer that prints out little fake human meat, so that he can eat little human cutlets without actually eating people. So I was on the topic of things I wasn't sure we could get over the plate. I'm extremely proud of that. It's a super, super cool look. And I'm really excited. I hope to be able to do more with him, along with 2099 in general.
Yeah, man. I hope these miniseries do lead to more for you in 2099 universe. That's great.
We're
trying. Man. As you know, you got to keep the hustle going.
Indeed. Well, you do, and that's the good news. Hold on 1 second. I just want to, let's see. Yeah, all right, there you go. Barhoom also saying congratulations. And Exorcist Never Dies, going to be a great ride, says Jay. So that's very cool. Beautiful, man. And Ardo Bro says you're a gentleman. Thank you and congrats on everything. Indeed, he echoes my sentiment, definitely.
I should call it Dave. I think, David's been nice enough to be posting to me, but I believe David has a book out either last week or this week, Monomyth. So if you're watching this, make sure that you also check out David's new Mad Cave release. But do not pillory me if it was out this week or last week and not the reverse, because I only know it's coming out pretty soonish. But that is a killer book, and folks should be checking it out as well.
That's beautiful, man. Thanks as always. I love talking to you. You know that. If there was more time, I imagine you've got to get to your evening. I'd make you talk Star Trek.
Well, you got me. Listen, you said the magic phrase, so you got me for 8 minutes of Star Trek. What do you want?
All right, let's start. All right, very quickly. Picard season 3. What'd you think?
Oh God, that's an well. Look, I'll admit fully. Part of being a creator is divorcing yourself from your attitude as a fan, and I say that a lot to people who want to break into Marvel and DC. You can't look at these characters like a fan because as a fan, you kind of want nothing bad to happen to them, and as a creator, your job is to know that they're going to be okay, but until that moment, make a ton of bad shit happen.
Absolutely.
That being said, this is all my build up to me saying I can't really be objective about Star Trek. If I were writing the book, I would force myself to. If I were writing a Star Trek comic, and I would, by the way, Mark Waid, write that for $1, especially because money doesn't exist in Star Trek. So should I even morally be paid to write that book? Not sure, but also yes. But I can't be so like. It is almost biologically impossible for me to divorce my joy at seeing the Next Gen cast back in Picard season 3, which is all to say, I think it was a much better written and much more tightly written season than the past 2, though I am sure that it has faults that are just blowing right past me because I just,
Tiny ones.
I fucking like become visibly emotional like every time the specifically the Klingon theme plays for Worf. I don't even know why. But that first scene where he's training with Raffi and you hear like the classic what became the iconic Klingon theme that originated in the motion picture.
Yes.
I'm like basically already on the floor.
I'm with you.
So
great music cues throughout the series. Absolutely, man. Great callbacks to great Star Trek music, definitely.
But I will say this. Oh my God, I'm doing the First Contact theme at the end of every one, which is like the most gorgeous and mournful Star Trek music on the planet. Anyway, I will say this, like I think it is as close as we've gotten to like a good balance of fan service to development, because you did eventually get everyone together. And by the way, like I'm not going to act like I didn't like erupt in tears when they finally got the Enterprise D back. But at the same time, it wasn't too easy. You at least had those moments where where Jordan didn't want to fuck with them anymore. And you had just enough of stuff like I really love Shaw's character because he wasn't wrong. Like that's the best kind of character. You want
said the same thing from minute one. Absolutely, man. It's
you want to hate
Picard
him.
Picard would have yelled at an admiral if like, hey, we're going the other way. No, not on my ship. Back off, man.
Well, yeah, like that's the thing. You want to hate him because he's being mean to your favorites, but again, like you would understand why. It's a fun analysis of how we watch these types of movies because you watch Best of Both Worlds. And it's easy because obviously you're emotionally invested in the Enterprise crew to overlook that the massive trauma and tragedies that occurred there to people who were not the Enterprise crew. I actually think about this a lot. Because we become so desensitized, which isn't like movies are the problem. That is not my angle. But I do think it's easy to forget that like every single character that dies in an action movie had a mom, had a dad, had years of a story. And we just, like how many people does John Wick kill over the course of those 4 movies? I think over 1,000. And I'm not even kidding. But every single one of those characters had years of a normal life where they weren't a goon. And it's easy to forget that. And I think that's what Shaw gives us. It's easy to be, oh, well, those ships blew up and whatever, right? Well, no, that every ship that got killed by the Borg had hundreds of people on it that had moms and dads and spouses and siblings and goals. And I actually thought he was an incredibly smart character. And I loved the development for 7 of 9. I loved that the guest appearances weren't who you'd expect, like, and yeah, we didn't get all the ones you maybe wanted, but then you got ones that you never expected. I never expected them to do more for Ensign Rowe in like 1 episode than we got for a long time. I never expected to see Shelby back for like the 3 seconds that she was there before getting fucking murdered. Like it was I was really happy about it. And I'll be honest, like I thought that season 1 and season 2 of Picard both had really, like if I pitch the log line to people who haven't watched it, they get excited. It just feels as though they got a little too mired in stuff that just muddied the waters. Because if I tell people that season 2 of Picard is It's a Wonderful Life with Q and Picard, which it kind of is, like the whole point is that Q is dying and he wants to show Picard that living matters. Well, then that sounds great. But that's like so much other shit that is outside of that very narrow log line happens. And that's hard for me because Q is my favorite Star Trek character. So I was happy that he was back. And I do think by the way, I think after all that bullshit happens, I think his final scene with Picard in 2 before he dies is fucking great.
Okay.
I mean, how we got there was not amazing, but like his final, like his realization that Picard is like his only real friend. We've all known that. That's the fun of these things. Like this omnipotent character, we've all known that Picard is his best friend basically since the first episode. But so watching him realize that I thought was very emotional.
Yeah, I agree with you, but yeah, how we got there is a little more complicated and everything. And I'll confess, Steve, and again, I'm saying this for the audio audience that isn't seeing me say it. To be honest, most of New Trek has been a disappointment for me. Strange New Worlds, there is potential, and I liked it best of the live action shows, but I still think there's room for improvement there. Discovery to me is a mess, and we can talk about it another time.
Well, so I'll say this, John. I will admit I really, really like Discovery, but it has the same the critique I gave to Picard 1 and 2, I could give to Discovery as well. And I also think, here's my hot take. I kind of think the first 2 seasons were completely useless.
Of Discovery or
when I started to like the show is when it truly became the show that was furthermost in the future. And I think that, I mean, we're going over time, and I'm okay with that because we're talking about Star Trek. I think if we'll never know, but the world of season 3 and 4, where there's no federation and shit is completely broken, and just these few people that get it have to put it back together. I personally think if that was the first season, people would feel a lot differently about the show.
I agree with you.
Because that, to me, that's Star Trek. The universe is in disarray, but here you have people that believe in working together and trying to solve a problem. And what is more Star Trek than that? But we got there again in such a bizarre way. And I will say this as well. You're not obligated to agree, of course. Yes, it's super imperfect, but I will say that Saru is maybe my favorite new Star Trek character in a long, long time, just because you've never seen something like that before. And again, it plays in our perceptions. We, for example, as humans, we eat meat all the time for the most part. Obviously, plenty of people don't. That's all cool. But a lot of people who eat meat have trouble actually being reminded that the thing they're eating was a living creature. So now you have a character like Saru, who's a Kelpian, and he's a thinking, sentient person with all these things, but also has to reckon with the fact that he's a food source.
Yep.
For people, and then overcome that and start seeing himself as more. Like, I think that whole species was incredibly interesting, and I think
realized
really enjoyed him. But look, yeah, it's not perfect. And as always, I almost wish that they were 10 episodes long instead of 13, so that they could trim a little some stuff from it.
Oh, absolutely, man. No, the pacing for the live action stuff, yeah, they've got the order for 10 episodes, and they try to stretch out a story in 10, as opposed to, and as I've talked to other show people for streaming shows say, we thought we were going to do 8, we needed a little more room, so we made it 9, or, we had 6 hours, this is what we're doing. I wish there was more of that. And the other thing that bothers me, I'm glad you mentioned the Kelpians and what they are. I can't get behind Emperor Giorgio, Michelle Yeoh's Mirror Universe character, given that she's to eat Kelpian. And it's like she's a cannibal. I mean, I'm like, I don't root for this person. And she was, the short end is Space Hitler. Okay, whatever. But she was the Emperor of the Mirror Universe. I think she's irredeemable, but that's me.
Well, it's not like she's going to be doing good shit in Section 31, to be fair. But no, I mean, I like that. It's funny, like Strange New Worlds, I do think it's my favorite of the live action shows. I have an editor who will remain nameless because I'm about to bury him, who's a big Star Trek fan, and he enjoys Strange New Worlds but can't get over how high Pike's hair is. And man, it's sci-fi. That hair could be so much higher.
He could be Kid and Play, for that matter.
But it's funny because I do. I think that the additions they make, like I loved Hemmer. Like a lot of the new characters are my favorite characters.
Me too.
And it gives me hope. I mean, I really, I mean, I'm excited for the 5th season of Discovery. I'm excited for the 2nd of Strange New Worlds. I will admit, I was talking to my boyfriend about this. I think the tendency to do this prequel content, it's a short-term gain, but I do think on some level, all the stuff would be better for me, at least, if it was all new. Like I understand. It's just you can see the corporate thinking in some ways, right? Like in the first episode of Next Gen, it's like if Next Gen had like 50% old characters instead of Bones comes through and he's like 150 years old. But that's more like when Prime Universe Spock does the handoff in the '09 movie. He doesn't fucking stay, like that's a passing of the torch. But I feel like doing all this prequel content where that half of the characters are not going to be imperiled because they lived through to shit from 60 years ago. That's not a passing of the torch at all. That's a death grip on the torch.
I'm with you, man. I don't. Yeah.
But
go ahead, finish your
thought.
Oh
no, that's kind of. I mean, like I could ramble about that. So go on.
Well, seriously, man. Cully Hamner, big Star Trek fan. John Layman, big Star Trek fan. And I every now and then I'll have a roundtable and we'll just bullshit about Star Trek. So if you ever want to do that, you've got an invite.
I would do it anytime. If we brought my boyfriend on, you would just be an hour and a half about the Enterprise C.
I would have no
just
problem
about the Enterprise C.
Captain Garrett, Rachel Garrett, Enterprise C. Very nice. The Red Lady.
Oh God. But yeah, no. I mean, I could talk about it for a long, long time. But then again, I think we have talked about how it's not the best Star Trek movie, but my underdog favorite is the 5th one. Which by the way,
I have so much love for The Final Frontier. It's not a perfect movie. Go on.
No, it's not good. Okay, but I would rather an ambitious failure than playing it safe. And much like Picard, if I only told you that 5 was about the Enterprise crew going into space to find God, you would be like, I'm fucking in, because what does that even look like? And then of course we know what it looks like, and it's Kirk with a Go Climb a Rock shirt.
I got to interview Lawrence Luckinbill, Sybok, and I totally gave justice for Sybok and everything. And I'm like, man, you had a thankless job. They wanted, Connery, they get you, and I go, but you were a good counterweight, and managed to not be silly. And also, I love all the humor moments. I love when they're in the brig. And, Kirk is finally learning about Sybok being Spock's brother. And he's like, I got to sit down. It's just that and just those hopeless moments, or when they're on the rocket boots and they're sinking too many marshmallows. No, I'm sorry. I love that. Or even Scotty's pratfall when he knows the ship like the back of his head. Come on, man.
I mean, I will say this. When they teased Sybok at the end of Stranger Worlds, I was viscerally excited. Well, just because, again, that's an interesting character that we didn't get a lot of time with. He was already radicalized in Final Frontier, and then I guess if you actually think about it, then he gets blown up by the Klingons, since he absorbs Shakari at the end or whatever. So he gets blown up by a spaceship. Yeah, I mean, the Star Trek movies I like. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't like Wrath of Khan, but I do like the ones that are about answering big questions. So I would always watch the motion picture, for example.
I think it ages quite well.
Have you watched the 4K? Have you watched the 4K?
Absolutely, I have.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, no, they cleaned it up nice, and that's great because I know Robert Wise was always kind of embarrassed by the obligation to get that film by that rather than let's make it right. And that literally the prints were wet in the cans as they were going to the world premiere because they literally had to work until the very last minute to finish it. And that's why the original cut is so unwieldy and everything.
But that's a good example too. Like, I think that in a way, like we were talking about the characters coming back in Picard, the motion picture is the first time we kind of got that. The show was over. Now here are all the characters, you know. But I mean, it made Kirk a dick. I mean, Kirk is not always a good dude in that movie, which I appreciate.
He's selfish. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I do applaud all of them, all of the original cast movies, in for the most part their willingness to make these characters imperfect. I mean, Kirk is a straight up racist in Undiscovered Country, and he admits as much. You know,
Absolutely.
So I think
Let them die. They're animals.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking now to see how far they're willing to make him, and obviously he learns his lesson and whatever. Sure. But you know, these days we can't handle that Luke Skywalker's a curmudgeon on a weird planet. He needs.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. Absolutely. Well, seriously, I'm happy to have a Star Trek talk with you at one point. Nick Barucci, thanks for watching and the nice things you said. As always, really appreciate it. But no, you got to come back and we'll talk more Star Trek sometime and just bullshit and everything. That'd be great. Can you hang out for a quick second as I wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, excellent. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. It's going to be a fun anniversary week. I've got some surprises, and I will tell you more about them when I confirm that those surprises are going to happen. So until then, thanks for watching. Stay happy, stay healthy.